Joe Williams, good to have you here, mate.
It's good to be here. 5.5 hour trip in the car this morning. It's good. It's good. I can do the city in small doses these days. I spent a while here. Probably took me 10 years to get used to it. Want to go back to bush every day, but yeah, here a lot, or through here a lot, through work anyway. So it's always good. I actually had a conversation this morning though. I was like, I don't like coming back to Sydney anymore. And they're like, what do you mean? Because my kids, my two oldest kids, used to live in Sydney,
Yeah.
right? And then now they've grown up and they've moved away. So I'm like, I get triggered a little bit by going past their old neighbourhood, and because like it was conversations all right, I'm just going to see my son, I'm just going to see my daughter, sort of thing. So yeah, it's a challenge to come here and no one to visit anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we could make a visit out of it today. You mentioned the bush. Born in Cowra, grew up in Wagga. Talk to me about early life in the bush for a young Joe Williams. What was it like?
Yeah. Like obviously you don't think these things in the moment, but I reflect a lot, and just a kid with dreams to be out of there, right? Loved the country, loved the community, and still love going back there. But always just wanted to, go down in the big lights of Sydney and play footy and all that sort of stuff. So always had dreams and goals to go down that path. I was just a young fella. I remember, I guess, reflecting on it, I remember big, massive touch footy games with dad and, 20, 30, 40 people, just, and majority, 90%, if not 100% Aboriginal people doing it whilst we're playing, and the laughter and the competitiveness, and it shapes who you are, like, you can see arguments because of the competitiveness in these touch games, but then you see, laughter and then giving it to each other a little bit. So like that shapes who I am as a person. People say I'm probably too much of a shit stirrer at times, but that's probably where I learned it from the best.
Talk to me. You mentioned dad. Talk to me about family growing up. Sounds like a sporty family, a family that encouraged that competitive side of you. What was the dynamic like at home?
Whether competitiveness was encouraged or not, like words are important. Like I reflect and say, it's not that it was encouraged, but it was always there. It was always in me. Like I had an older brother who was by far my toughest opponent, and would wipe the floor of me, with everything and anything. My dad still says today, when people say who is a better footy player out of Joe and my older brother Mike, like dad says, don't mention him in the same sentence. Like Joe doesn't go anywhere near him, like Joe doesn't do his boot up, sort of thing. So I always had my I guess my idol growing up was my big brother. Unfortunately broke his neck at a relatively early age, just 18, and he never got to play again. But he was one of those guys that was really, really good, really, really talented. But then when footy clubs would want to come and watch him or show attention to him, he'd just say, "Mum, I don't want to play today."
And how old were you when he broke his neck?
I think I was about 12, 11
Okay.
or 12, yeah.
So he's like 6 years your senior.
Thereabouts, yeah. Thereabouts.
And what was that experience like for you as a young man who loved the game of rugby league, wanted to play it? Was that harrowing to see your brother go through an experience like that?
I think I was then sort of starting to play. I don't know if you heard of the Lloyd McDermott Rugby Union. It's an Aboriginal rugby union program. Lloydies has done great stuff for Aboriginal kids in the rugby union space for a number of years. I was starting to sort of move towards those rep spaces, and because mum and dad didn't particularly know, particularly more so mum, didn't know a great deal about rugby, but only saw the rucks and the malls, like would then be like terrified of me playing. So she was like, I don't want you playing that. There was conversation of, don't want you playing rugby league anymore, because of what happened. What happened to my brother was a freak accident. But it was just one of those things that, yeah, maybe he wasn't supposed to play. It's one of them, those sort of stories. But there was some hesitation for sure around whether I should play, whether I want to play. based on the fact that my brother broke his neck. Yeah.
Let's talk about, you mentioned those touch games where, predominantly Aboriginal people coming together to play and compete. It strikes me as maybe unique, something community oriented, because often when you go out in the bush, I see kind of fewer and farer Aboriginal people amongst what's typically a lot of white people. Is that true in Wagga and Cowra?
In Cowra, big Aboriginal community.
Okay.
And I just remember, the old man was, I guess he was probably central to a lot of Aboriginal sporting teams within that town. So he'd have 14, 15, 16-year-olds through to adults. And as I said, 20, 30, 40 of them. And it'd be just like, all right, we're, Sunday afternoon, we're meeting at 2:00 and we're playing down at River Park. Like that was, the local footy field, local junior footy field. And they just play for hours.
That's what childhood dreams are made of, right?
Oh, it's like
That's the best.
it's whilst we, people ask as an Aboriginal person, did you do a lot of culture growing up? And I say, no, I didn't do a lot of culture growing up because, what we seem or think or believe as culture to be, the dancing and, the artworks and things like that. And I'm like, well, everything we did was community. And what culture is, or what culture has always been, I believe, is about community. It's about communal processes and places where we're all doing things for each other. We're all helping out each other. So whether it be sport, the aspect of what that is, community, was hugely prominent in my youth, particularly in Cowra. When we went to Wagga, it was a bit different because we didn't know anyone. Dad, we sort of went there because Dad was playing footy, and I didn't really know didn't know anyone. We sort of knew a couple of different people that we mixed with, and then because we sort of moved there outside of footy season, I didn't know anyone. So it was just one of those things. I do recall or remember it. It was a massive touch footy carnival on in Wagga that weekend, and there was an Aboriginal band playing, which was called the Foot Full of Bindies. If you know anyone in the New South Wales Aboriginal space, they know who the Bindies are.
Foot Full of Bindies.
Foot Full of Bindies. And the Simpson brothers, and from a little place called Wolgalu, and that in the Wagga community, they were huge. And it was a touch carnival, and I remember it. And the Bindies played that night. Wow, I haven't thought of that.
Wow, there's that long-term memory.
I haven't thought of that in 30 years. But I can see it now. Reflecting on it, we didn't know anyone at that whole place. It was actually funny. I speak to him a little bit online, and but I remember walking with Dad, amongst hundreds and hundreds of people in this touchy, and Dad goes, "Horry." And I was like, who's he talking to? And this guy turned around. He goes, "Willie." And it was Horry Hastings, Jackson Hastings' dad, Kevin Hastings. And, I guess years down the track, I've connected with Horry online, and we have conversations and stuff like that. But I remember that was because he and Dad played footy together at East. And I remember that was the first time I ever had interactions with Horry Hastings. And Dad said, this guy was an amazing halfback and played at East, and so anyway, reflections. There's that memory thing that I've said to people 1,000 times. I can't remember what I did this morning, but I can remember a random fact from 35 years ago.
So talk to me about moving to a town like Wagga, then not knowing a lot of people. Likely as a child, it makes you feel a little bit more isolated. How did it make you feel about yourself and your cultural identity then? Because I know that you've mentioned before you experienced a lot of racism growing up. Is that kind of the origin of that, feeling more isolated?
It's just, I think it's a product of community, a product of small towns, a product of time. We went to a school where there was, not a massive amount of Aboriginal kids, but the Aboriginal kids all hung together and stuck together, and were well supported by the Aboriginal staff. But, right throughout primary school to high school to sports events, there was racism everywhere in our youth. Like it's still around.
Did you recognise that as a young man, or was that conversations with your parents trying to make sense of what you're experiencing?
You get noticed as different. You feel different. When you're made to feel othered, you can't name it as a 10-year-old, but when you're made to feel othered, as in he's not part of us, that sticks. Yeah, it's a sensitive thing for people, and there's wide research around microaggressions of racism. Bruce Perry talks great. There's loads of research around being othered or treated as different. And that's certainly, as I'm sitting here now, like things come flooding back to me as a young person, in schools, sports games, for sure.
Do you feel like a lot of that comes from the kids that are similar age to you, or the parents, adults, or is it a
kids
mix?
go to school and they hang out with whoever they hang out with? Like, I can reflect now on kids that we all hung out together in primary school, but then when we get to an age of high school, you looked at as different because of the color of your skin. Like that's very much a learnt thing. Like, kids are innocent when they come into the world, whether they're black, green, or purple. Everyone treats each other the same when you're a certain age, and then it changes. And that's I believe that's a very learnt thing. Because you start, again, the impact of seeing people as different, seeing people as other, the conversations that happen behind the closed doors when you're not in the friendship circles that you are at school. That impacts kids in how they treat people. And it impacts kids in how they treat people, and then particularly minority groups. Often those conversations aren't spoken about loud. They're spoken about behind the closed doors at the kitchen table.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're right. Everyone comes into the world innocent, with love and affection for the people who treat them with love and affection. I remember growing up, going to preschool. I was 4 or 5 at my school, and I spent my whole schooling career at one school. It was a school that ran from prep through to year 12, albeit I didn't attend year 11 and 12. But one of my best mates, Singaporean background, and so we look completely different. Another one of my good mates, Chinese background, so we look completely different. But we had this mix of mates who all hung out and spent our whole schooling life together, and that was very normal. And so as a young guy, there wasn't a lot of racism that I experienced around me, because we had this group of mates who spent their whole schooling career together in a very small school. So our circle was tight. Like, from the minute that we met each other, every lunchtime until year 10, we kicked the footy, played touch. When the teacher wasn't on duty, a little bit of tackle. Like, we had a great time as mates. So our experience at school was beautiful. But that's certainly not everyone's experience, right? And I wonder, when you're experiencing this as a kid, conversations with mum and dad at home, trying to make sense of what's changed, what were those conversations like? Are both of your parents Indigenous background or Aboriginal background?
Yeah, but mum's got very fair skin. Mum's got, and again, for different reasons as to why these sort of things happen throughout, the landscape of what Australia is. But we were always very strong in who we were as Aboriginal people. That was always talked about. It was always celebrated because we had a large Aboriginal family as well. And challenges happen because of difference everywhere we see, if you know what you're looking for. Like for me, it's hard to sit back and reflect on, and again, just in reflection now, you talk about your best mates who I went to a school, and lucky enough, because of the route I went down with sport, is that I got some scholarships to pay for my schooling and stuff like that, and through my footy, that was one of my first deals that I ever signed, was to make sure that my schooling was paid for, because mum and dad recognised that school was an important thing, and who those kids were at school, and who they were as adults, are different people, because we didn't see each other as different. Like, I was one of probably 2 or 3 Aboriginal kids that were at our school. Certainly only 2. I think there was only 2 in my year group, and then it slowly gets larger to 4, 5, 6, but there wouldn't have been over 10 people, 10 Aboriginal people in our entire school. So we see each other as accepted in the school playground or on the school footy team. But then as you get older, you just don't mix the same circles.
It's interesting. It's a really interesting point, because I think that a huge solve to some of these problems is by spending time with people who have different experience and different background to you, right?
That's all. That's exactly what it is.
Mm.
Like if I sit with someone from a war-torn country and have conversations with them and hear the pain in their voice and see the tears in their eyes, then I'm going to have compassion. Yet if I see them walking around town in a group, I'm going to have, again, the ways that our mechanics are formed have bias around how I feel about people. But if we spend time with each other and actually get to know each other on a deeper level and understand, like I always say, we need to have more compassion, less judgment, because we're wired. The mechanics of who we are as people. I walk into a place and I'm surrounded by only white people, then I fear judgment straight away. Straight away. Still to this day. Because I know the conversations that I had behind closed doors. It's better. Don't get me wrong, it's better. But you only have to look at recent, don't want to date the podcast, but you only have to look at recent things in the news. Always is around race. Always.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And part of the problem, we're speaking about this off camera, is because that stuff and those extreme opinions get clicks.
Yeah.
It's a big part of the problem with the podcast and the media space, is a lot of it.
And they're so formed on their opinions is that they're not prepared to sit down.
Mm.
If you pull those people away from their groups and sit them down one-on-one, you'd probably get a very different person. One, because those type of people have, again, looking at my work is all around behavior and people and why we are the way we are. Hell of a lot of those people that sit in those groups are super insecure people that don't live the truth. Because when you understand the truth, ultimately the truth is like gravity. It always bubbles to the surface. But when you run away from it, you hide it and you push it down, then you can live a facade. You can pretend to believe your own narrative without understanding. This is why I just don't understand challenges with even race in this country, is because like the country was formed on believing a people were less than the other people.
Let's talk about this. So one of the things that we discussed before we got here today is you said to me, Brad, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, well, Joe, I want to talk about you and your life and your career and the things that make you the human being that you are. But I also want to talk about what's happening socially and culturally in Australia. And I believe that the reason that this is super important is because I don't know everything, right? And I have a relative ignorance or naivety because I've lived my experience, not yours. And part of the importance, I think, of having a conversation like this is I'm not going to get everything right. I understand that these are sensitive topics, but if we don't have these conversations in a way in which we seek to understand each other, nothing ever changes. That's part of the problem, I think for all of the stuff out there that is inflammatory and where people point fingers and choose to use language and labels with an intent to be harmful, to be hurtful, to divide, I think there is equally a huge group of people who want to have important conversations, make a difference, but feel potentially a little too scared to say the wrong thing, to ask the wrong question, and to upset someone in the process. And so today we're going to have this conversation. And if I'm out of line, you tell me. And I'm sure there might be things that we agree and disagree on, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of good to come from this. I want to talk about exactly what you just said there. So I mentioned I grew up with a couple of different mates from different cultural backgrounds, but I didn't grow up around any Aboriginal mates. There were no Aboriginal kids at my school, at least that I can remember, or in my time at the school. And maybe partly because it was a private Christian school, so it was a very small school. And the reason I went to that school was because it was the only primary school, I should say, in the area that would allow me to take my natural digestive enzymes in the playground as opposed to in a teacher's office. My parents wanted me to have a normal school life. And so I went to that school. And it turned out to be an amazing school. A lot of people with really great values. I'm not particularly religious, but I think that the intentions of the people in the school were wholly really good. But I remember learning about Australian history, maybe like aged 11 in history at school, and hearing about what happened in the Captain Cook coming to this country and the Australia that we know today, how it was formed. And I remember this ignorance in me and this impulse in me to almost want to fight back against what I heard. And I actually remember being quite ignorant and vocal about it at school. Not in a way of attacking any people, but it's almost like this thing of when it's like, hey, we did this wrong. And I'm like this innocent kid who loved everyone and cared about everyone, no matter the color of your skin. I'm like, hold on, I didn't do anything. What do you mean? Like, what do you mean we've done something wrong? I love this country. This is a great country. I know this country for so many great things. There was almost this mentality in me that hated that the finger was being turned back on us as a country. And I couldn't understand that. And to be honest, that kept me ignorant for a while, where I eventually, as I got older, had mates who had Aboriginal background, loved them, cared for them, were able to have these conversations. But really then I only started to understand, okay, there's a different side of this story, different side of the story that we want to feel comfortable about. Former guest of the podcast, Mark Fennell, who did a series called Stuff the British Stole, and has done some amazing work. Mark has a quote that history often hides behind politeness.
How long was the episode?
Oh, mate, you could talk for days, right?
No, I'm not talking about Mark. I'm saying the Stuff the British stole.
Yeah. It's
been about 4 episodes.
It's a whole series, mate. And you know, one of the things he says is history often hides behind politeness. And I think, you know, similar, our perspective sometimes does too. It hides behind what we want it to feel and see like. We want to make it feel pretty, right? And so I now have, without naming anyone or singling anyone out, I now have some people in my life that I absolutely love and care about who have Aboriginal background, and their future kids will grow up alongside my future kids. And I want nothing more than for all of our kids to have the same opportunities to live in a world in which they can celebrate the country that provides so much and has so many great strengths. I want them to be able to celebrate that together and feel as though that the world they're living in is a fruitful place, a place in which they can coexist, you know, care for each other and have great futures. And so I think it's really important that we have this conversation. And I'm sorry for the long-winded delay there, but talk to me about your perspective on all of this and what you know as an Indigenous man with that background.
Yeah, we got a long way to go. Yeah, we got a long way to go. And it depends on, you know, you're reflecting on your early education at school and learning about, you know, what happened and how it happened and all that. Will probably depend on your age as well. Because I remember, you know, when I grew up, you know, learning about the early days, I didn't hear anything about massacres. I didn't hear anything about the truth. I didn't hear anything about the real stuff that happened and the violence and how it happened. I didn't hear about any of that sort of stuff. You know, it was like a kumbaya type, everything was great and they were here first and we all got along together without understanding that, you know, like Australia has how Australia was formed has a brutal history in how, when it was taken, and then the behaviour that was outlaid onto Aboriginal people is horrific. And when we come to understand the truth of these things, can we start to look at a bit of empathy. Now, you reflected on something. You said, you know, I don't want people to point the finger at me. Well, no one's pointing the finger at you. We just we want to understand. We need to understand that whilst the finger isn't pointed at you, you bear the fruits of what happened. Well, we don't. So you only got to look at, close the gap statistics around life expectancy, how you and I are born on the same day. As a non-Indigenous man, as a Wiradjuri and Wolgalu man, I will die some 10 years younger than you. So and we're going to have a look at lots of stuff around, how these conversations are being had, who's controlling the narrative. I don't even talk about the word reconciliation, because to reconcile is to heal a broken relationship. We've never had one. To have a relationship, you need to learn about us. And we've only learned about you. That's the history of how it's played out throughout the school education systems, is that we've only learned about the non-Indigenous narrative. So you need to learn about us. For us to form a relationship, you need to learn about how we looked after country, how we looked after different things, and the relationships that we had with people. So we've got a long way to go, and report after report after report, around deaths in custody, around medical negligence, around all sorts of closing the gap is a hell of a lot of these statistics and recommendations are founded in racism. So why people are dying younger, why people are dying at the hands of other people, a hell of a lot to do with it, particularly in the race-related conversation, is heavily comes down to racism.
Explain what you mean by a lot of those statistics are founded in racism. What do you mean by
that? There's been multiple, what would you call it, inquiries around, how I've had cousins, as for part of deaths in custody, and family friends as part of deaths in custody. I've had cousins as part of medical negligence, when they walk into a hospital and complain about things, and they're judged straight away as to being an addict because of their appearance, as far as having dark skin or looking Aboriginal. These things these aren't opinions. These things are documented in reports, that there's been multiple recommendations over multiple decades now that are just looked over and not acted on. Yet we spend billions of dollars, right, or at least hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on things like Close the Gap, where it's actually going backwards. And
it's interesting.
It's taxpayers' money that is getting wasted on programs that aren't working, yet continuously be refunded. And let's look at what those are. A hell of a lot of them are non-Indigenous organisations. I say, a great mentor and leader and that I look up to a lot, Uncle Paul Gordon. He talks about, if all Aboriginal people got well tomorrow, think about that. If all Aboriginal people got well tomorrow, and there was no incarceration rates, suicide rates, health statistics, education rates, if all Aboriginal people got happy, healthy, and well tomorrow, there'd be thousands and thousands and thousands of people out of jobs. Us being unwell is a business. It's an entire economy. And we are dying more than we ever have. Kids being removed, people are dying in custody, people are dying through medical negligence in hospitals. We are dying more often by suicide. We are dying more often and being diagnosed more than we ever have been with different challenges, in the mental health space. Yet there's more money in mental health than there ever has been. There's more organisations and advocates, but people are dying more than they ever have.
I'm about to put a heavy weight on your shoulders here. How do we solve it?
How do we fix it? There's a massive push within our community about Aboriginal community controlled organisations. Right, I go into your house and tell you to live a certain way. You're going to push back and say, actually, that's not beneficial for us. Right, that's not going to help us live the best way that we can, because I know my family, I know the way that we've always lived, and I know the way that we've always done things, and what you're telling me is not beneficial to how we live and how we have always survived and thrived. Right? Simple, isn't it?
Mm.
Yet we're not afforded the same luxuries to be able to tell people how we get well. As I said, we're a multi-billion-dollar economy that keep jobs going. And the more we are unwell, the more the business thrives. So there's a big push around Aboriginal community controlled organisations because our communities know how to help our communities.
So what does that actually look like? If we play that out, so you think about those community control initiatives or services, whatever we call them, what does that actually look like? If something like that rolled out and we talk about being able to live the way that your ancestors always have, like how explain that to me? So, because this is
It's
so
been able
new,
to
it's so
walk, yeah.
foreign to me,
It's
right?
been able to walk in the two worlds, right? And
Yeah.
and understanding that that we socially and emotionally have lived certain ways for thousands and thousands of years. And everything that we're seeing in community now, not just the Aboriginal community, but all community, everything that we're seeing in community now is a very natural and normal response to a very unnatural and abnormal world, right? And how it's being impacted by us, like think about even things like employment rates and things like that, or unemployment rates, particularly within our communities. I go into some communities where they've never seen anyone work. I've gone into communities where they've never seen anyone graduate school. So how can you have a judgment or place a judgment on certain people or communities and how they live when they've never been exposed to certain ways and systems before? So the challenges that we see in a lot of our communities is that we're strong in one world and not the other. And depending on where we are based, like location-wise, will a lot of the times depend on what world we're strong in. So nothing about us without us is a big call in our communities. And everything that we do, there should be our people at the table designing the processes and how that works.
That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Like complete sense, doesn't it? But it don't happen. That's the thing. There's only pushes for it now where like years and years after Close the Gap statistics are going backwards. And I'm talking billions of dollars being wasted. Like, it makes complete sense to go, how about we ask Aboriginal people how to help Aboriginal people? Wild one. Like, it's nuts to think that our people in our community aren't even considered in a hell of a lot of the decision making. So there's a big push, and it's happening, albeit slowly, but there's a big push for things like Aboriginal community controlled organisations, but also having the capability and capacity to be able to deliver on certain things can be a challenge as well because of those two worlds, right? Is that a hell of a lot of our organisations get themselves in trouble because they don't know how to write reports properly. Like my organisation hasn't been funded for the last 10 to 12 years. And there's other organisations out there, non-Indigenous organisations, that get millions of dollars to roll out programs in communities. And like you get me that works with Aboriginal communities, I guess, largely across the country, that has never essentially been funded to go, here's X amount of dollars, Joe, go and do what you do. Right? I get consulted a hell of a lot by non-Indigenous organisations. Hey, come and do this work for us.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder, it just came to my mind then as we were having that conversation about the two worlds. Are there any Aboriginal communities in Australia that we know are thriving because of where they're situated and there is a little bit more of that control? Or not so much?
In different ways. I guess it's, I can't sit here and tell you that XYZ communities are going fantastic, depending on their locality. But I do know that there's, once we start to get in control of what we do and how we do it, there is, communication's better, relationships are better. And, you're starting to get kids to go to school and things like that. That's the other thing, is that like Aboriginal kids are graduating school more than they have. more than they ever have. Yet we're still incarcerated more and dying more and dying younger. So maybe it's not the Western education system that's going to fix us. That's a hard one for people to hear. I've always been a believer of that.
I'm trying to think about this, and paint a picture, because this is so new to me, right? So I'm trying to paint a picture here. What does having that world that you know ancestrally, that is spoken about in your communities, what does having that world to go back to actually look like?
I think it's autonomy. Autonomy to be able to do it.
And so when you say
I know I've been in communities where they're not allowed to hunt for their own foods.
Okay.
They're not allowed to go and catch and kill kangaroo. Like, I've been in those communities. So it's like having autonomy to do what we have always done. And it's not just about the processes of things like hunting and gathering or collecting. It's just the processes of being able to do things together with each other. And whilst we could argue, yeah, you're allowed to do that, why aren't you doing it? We've been, I guess, so conditioned that stuff doesn't work. And that's a lot of what my PhD is about. It's healing through cultural practice. What do we do for thousands of years, and what are the impact that it have on us? So that is a conversation or a way to encourage our mob to go, look, this is the impact that dance has on us. This is the impact that doing things together has on us. Maybe we need to have a look at concentrating on that a little bit more, so then, X, Y, Z that we're being forced to do as it is. The narrative has got to change to, I guess, autonomy and community control. What that looks like. There's a hell of a lot of money that goes into our communities that is being that is just non-Indigenous organisations that come into the communities.
So let me ask.
If the statistics around Close the Gap are going backwards, then that tells you one of two things: they either don't know what they're doing, or the people who are doing it don't, or getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I ask community, and again, walking the two worlds, go in there and have conversations with community and say, what do you want? What does that look like? How can we do this to benefit you? Rather than coming in from a top-down approach and saying, this is what works, this is how you do it, and this is how you fix it. It's clearly not working.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be valuable too when, in and amongst those conversations, if not just Aboriginal community, but, everyday folk like myself could go and spend time with guys like you and learn about that and experience it and see how valuable
it's also not just guys like me. Like, it's communities right across the country have a hell of a lot more knowledge than me, because let's not forget, part of I guess a repercussion of living on the East Coast is that we lost it all first. So I've had to relearn it, right, post my career of sport, because my life, I thought, was all about, going to school and playing sport, right? So I didn't actually know a great deal about, inverted commas, culture, because I wasn't exposed to it, because my exposure was the sport life and then the profile of what that gave me and how. So I didn't learn about the true depths and knowledges of how we have lived the old ways until post-career as a 25 to 30-year-old man. Like, imagine implementing or educating our young people from the time that they were born into certain processes that we have as far as Aboriginal communities and how we interact and how the respect systems in how we did things. Imagine doing that from babies. Like, I see the impact that it's had on my life post-sports career, because I was a lost little boy when I was playing footy, running around worried about my own ego, seeing myself on TV, worrying too much about alcohol and drugs and self-destructing every weekend. Right? It wasn't until I got sober and then started to learn about who I am as an Aboriginal man that my life started to get back on track.
Let's talk about that. You mentioned alcohol and drugs. I know that was a really difficult time of your life in which you feel like you lost track of yourself. You left yourself and ultimately had to come back and find yourself after a few years. Alcohol and sport culture don't seem to mix very well in Australia. There are some scary statistics. I've got some stuff written down here.
I would say before you go there, alcohol and people don't mix well.
Yeah.
Not sport culture. Like the biggest documented drug problem that Australia's got is alcohol. Yet we go, oh, it's not great in sport. I don't know. Like it's not your footy players in the pub every weekend that go home and smash a joint up.
No,
Like
but there is something though about sport, and like we've got statistics here, so that in Australia, Victoria Police prepare for a 20% spike on AFL Grand Final day in domestic violence. La Trobe ran a study that found domestic assault in New South Wales increased by 40% on State of Origin nights. So there is obviously something about that culture that brings out the worst in people when they're drinking alcohol. Now, I can't speak to any experience with alcohol.
I think language is so important. I don't think it's about the sport culture. I think it's about people getting on the piss.
Yeah.
Like it's not about sport.
So you think it's more they're just nights where people get on the drink?
More.
But wouldn't you say that like nights like New Year's Eve, Christmas, around those periods of the year, there are more people drinking than there would necessarily be on a grand final day?
But again, it's probably, again, I don't know statistics inside and out, but it's probably things like, as you said, grand final weekends and all state of origins. It's like what's the word? Like it's a time to celebrate. And whilst Christmas and New Year's and stuff like that are, and I would suggest that those statistics are up there as well. Again, I gotta say, I don't think it's a sport issue. I think it's an Australian alcohol issue. Like it's a people issue. Like without a doubt, there's obviously a relationship between going to the footy and getting on the piss. But I think it's the people. It doesn't matter what the Melbourne Cup. Like there'd be a massive spike in and around that. Like it just depends on who's doing the documenting. But it's an alcohol problem with the Australian people. That is the issue, I believe.
So talk to me about your troubles with alcohol. What did that look like?
I wasn't angry, violent, drunk or anything like that. I was a pest. I was a pest who didn't know when to go home.
And how did that manifest as self-sabotage in your own life?
It was lots of stuff. It was trying to silence what was going on inside my head. And a hell of a lot of that is insecurity as a young person, then insecurity as a man, and insecurity with identity and not knowing who I was and wanting to be something that I wasn't, and the ego of what that can bring, and the challenges with relationships that can bring. And I just know that I wasn't the best version of me when I was on alcohol and or drugs. And until I removed that out of my life, did I begin to understand just how problematic it was.
How old were you at the time when a lot of these struggles were happening?
It's 20 years I've been sober now.
Wow, congratulations.
19 years in December.
That's incredible, man.
19 or 20. So I was only a 21-year-old. Well, I got sober at 21. So it's only, 18, 19, 20-year-old. Not that I drank when I was under 18, but like none of us do. But I was only a young man. Yeah. Thrust into a profiled space that was problematic for me.
What was it about the space that you feel really challenged you? Say the profiled space, I'm assuming you mean being a rugby league player, having attention, being on telly. What is it about that in particular that really challenged you?
Reflection, ego, too much money, too much attention, being something that you're actually not, the insecurities of what that can bring. And then having the responsibilities of living that every day, I was challenged by it.
What do you think is the difference between guys who find that difficult and the guys who seem to do a really good job of keeping a level head through it?
What do I say that again?
What do you think is the difference between the guys who, you know, because you can point to athletes in the country who are doing really well, got a lot of profile, but seem to have like a really steady head on their shoulders and seem to, at least from what we can see from the outside, have a relative composure where they keep it together. But then it can be so challenging for so many people. It's the reason that a lot of people who win the lottery and all of a sudden come into money that they've never known before, struggle with their mental health, have a lot of challenges, turn to avenues of self-sabotage like drinking, drugs, gambling. What do you think it is that separates it, that makes it more challenging for some than it is for others?
What do I think, or what I would lean to, what I know, is studies probably suggest that a hell of a lot of what we experience as adults is formed in the very early years in our life. So it has to be early experiences that we all have, and the environments that we're exposed to. You know, whether there's safety in that, whether it's celebrated, whether people are exposed to violence. You know, what is the norm? You know, what is the norm is exposed through our early experiences, and then the norm can become problematic for people.
I heard you in another interview talking about, you know, unfortunately, this coming to a boiling point where you attempted to take your own life. What year was that?
2012.
Are you comfortable talking about it?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, it's enough out there. It's publicized enough as it is, but like 2012. Yeah.
Are you able to talk about what that looked like at the time?
Just a lost, scared, lonely, insecure, hurt. What's the word I'm looking for? I always say I don't regret things, but probably a space of regret in not getting to where I thought or believed that I should have got to.
So expectation.
Own inner expectation rather than anyone else, and then realizing you didn't do it.
So thankfully, you're still with us today.
Yeah. There's a bigger plan. There's a bigger plan for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk to me about that time? You know, you obviously attempted to take your own life, you know, but you're still here. So
there was lots of stuff going on. And I think, again, not dating the chat we're having, but there's lots of stuff that was going on then, and there's lots of stuff that I continue to work through as a man now. Like, had it said to me recently, I didn't know you still struggled as much as you do, Joe. Because I say it all the time, I'm like a duck on the pond, you know, things look very smooth on the surface. But yeah, underneath is just this chaos of who I am and what I go through each day. The conversations, the noise that's in my head, even in this conversation now. I've been challenged by some things in this conversation. The noise that goes in my head then, just it makes me, you know, I'm sitting with my hands in my pockets because that's the only way I can keep my hands still. It's the only way that I can stop my hands from, you know, sweating profusely like they are.
Have I challenged you in any way to make you feel uncomfortable, or is it the inner?
I think it's both, right? Is that you haven't challenged me, but the content in me having to reflect has challenged me. I'm someone who's always questioning what and why I am the way I am. And as I said, that the recent, when somebody said to me, Joe, I didn't realize that, like, I'm very real in what I do, and I'm also conscious that this person who said this to me, obviously was looking at my social media more than knowing me. And sometimes the I guess the facade that we can portray with social media, but yeah, I'm someone who struggles with stuff a lot. I just manage it very well on the surface. People who know me closely know that there are challenges that happen, that I'm constantly working through as a person, constantly working through as a man, and grappling with this, who I am, and who I'm supposed to be. Right, and that's not an ego thing, but that's just sometimes we aren't who society expects us to be. And that can be a really tough road to walk when you're having to muddy your way through it each day.
What do you think society expects you to be?
I think individual people, I just want to be real, and society expects you to be fake. That's all of us. Like, I just
Part
want
of
to
the
be,
challenge,
I
right?
just want to be real. And
What does the real Joe scream to be able to, what is he screaming to want to be seen for?
I said this recently, and it was a hard reflection to have. A great deal of what is perceived as success in my life has birthed out of the need to be validated and seen. Why I was successful at certain things, why I'm in 200 communities a year, why it seems like I'm successful is the validation to be seen. And reflecting on something you said earlier, like where does all of it come from? And I said, where do I think it is, or where do I know it is? Like it's all come from the early experiences and environments we're exposed to. Every single one of us. We are shaped in the first 1,000 to 2,000 days of our life, 3 to 5 years of our life. Everything in how we view the world is shaped in those times. And whether we are insecure now as an adult, as somebody who seems to have all the things going on for him, like there's a hell of a lot of insecurities as a person of who I am. That's been raw and vulnerable, and I can't say that I've never been raw and vulnerable, because I guess I've been someone who's done my best to show that and show the real me a lot. But I've also said there are limited. I can count on one hand the amount of people who know the real me.
I wonder, we'll come back to that in a sec, because I want to touch on that a little bit more. But I want to ask you one more thing, and please tell me if you're uncomfortable with this. I heard you
See,
mention...
my hands are shaking or not.
Yeah, you're right.
Now let's go.
I heard you mention on another podcast about childhood trauma, and you've mentioned that first 1,000 to 2,000 days of our lives and how formative it is. Are you able to talk about what it is in particular in childhood and those early years that really challenged you?
I don't think there was anything that challenged me.
Just a number of things.
You can't. Like, I don't know about you, but do you remember the first 3 years of your life?
No.
So how can we sit here and have those conversations, Like, there's obviously things that people will know and remember, but we may not consciously remember what it is, but subconsciously and also inadvertently in our nervous system remembers everything that happened. So while we're anxious, while we sweat, while we get challenged by certain things, conversations, the way we look at each other, why these things happen is shaped in the first few years of our life. So like, I can't speak highly enough for my upbringing. My parents, I've had these conversations with my parents. My parents have done the best they could with the tools that they had, for sure, without a doubt. But the inner work that we all do is not about, for me particularly, is not about pointing the finger at anyone for anything they did wrong by me. It's about me navigating the experiences I feel now in my nervous system and how I project those into the world, particularly onto my kids.
We're flawed as human beings, right? It's part of the
Speak for
imperfect nature
yourself.
of us. I wonder whether in this modern world that we exist in, where there are a million podcasts telling you what you should do to improve your life, there are a million books that are telling you how you should solve the problem that you have, whether we have too much of a focus on how we need to improve to become perfect, to become healed, whether we should at some level, I think self-work is important, but I question whether at some level we should be okay with the fact that we are flawed, whether we should not need to solve all of our own problems, whether we can learn to be okay with ourselves.
Yeah, man, it's like there's lots of stuff that goes on with people. Are they flaws or is it real?
I like that.
Like there's a million self-help books. There's a million psychologists and counselors and the new space ice bath experts. Like there's a million wellness experts. It's its own economy now. Yet we're more messed up than ever. So I don't think we have to be anything but real. And as I said, are they flaws? Are they real? Because what is perfect?
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. It's a word. Like my perfect might be your mediocre. So what is it? Like we strive to be something based on what society believes we should be. And I just think that's rubbish. Because we just have to be the best version of ourselves. And we're not going to be. Maybe they're the flaws. Like when we know that we can do better and we choose not to. Because we're so comfortable in the norm, even when it's negative. So I think we just need to be real. And there is many versions of me that isn't real.
I think we all wear some sort of a mask.
Of course we do.
Out in the world.
We have to.
It's protective, right? We're trying to protect ourselves.
It's not. I think you hit it on the head there. It's a protective measure for, again, what society believes we should be. Because I walk down the street here and I'm looked at, and probably not in the city because everyone just walks past everyone, but you in the bush you walk and you look into each other's eyes and you see each other. And then we unconsciously make a decision about what that person is. And then we challenge it because so many people, or we're challenged by our narrative because so many people aren't real. So many people aren't authentic in who they are.
That's part of the problem with comparison, right? Is we're judging ourselves against what we perceive to be real. What we believe is a real reflection of somebody's life or the way that somebody looks. You know, we all post on our best days.
It's rubbish. It's rubbish because like perfection is monetized. And then we all want to be that because we all want to be, not saying we want to be rich, but we don't want to be poor. You know, there's a difference in wanting to be rich and not wanting to be poor.
Oh, absolutely. It's once again, it's self-protective, right? The desire to not want to be poor, to have enough to go about your life.
Well, what is poor? What is poor as well? Like that's a standard that society has. Like I mightn't have $1 in my pocket, but I'm rich in values.
Absolutely.
And how I treat
subjective,
people.
Right?
How I treat people. If we had a gauge on how we treat people and we could see that, like we see people's bank balance based on what car they drive or house they have, if we had a gauge on people's value system, holy smokes, there'd be some hollow people that we walk past every day.
I heard a really, really interesting definition of wealth from, what's his name? It's going to kill me if I don't remember this in front of you. Morgan Housel. He wrote a book, Psychology of Money. And this idea that wealth is the difference between what you have and what you think you want. Right? So the expectations we set ourselves, the things that we believe we need to feel enough, the material stuff that makes up what we put out to the world as, hey, this is our success. And ultimately, when you want a lot of things and you have what would be identified for most as just enough, you feel poor. Same for the rich man who wants many expensive things. He still feels poor. He still feels he doesn't have enough. And this is not me projecting this idea from a place of, well, I'm completely detached and I renounce everything, because I like nice things too. You know, I would love to have a lot of nice things. I feel though that I've gotten to a place in my life where I'm more comfortable with not needing it. Not all the time.
Wants and
most
needs.
of the time. Wants and needs.
There's a big difference. I'm someone who now doesn't care what he looks like with clothes or with how I care about how I present. But what I look like and the amount of money that I have as far as what my clothes are worth doesn't bother me, because I'm comfortable with who I am now. There was a time where I wasn't.
Let's talk about one of the real riches, family. You're a dad of a few, 5 kids, all different ages.
You're going to get me, man.
They are, I know, your pride and joy. Talk to me about the kids.
What do you want to know? They're all very different kids. They're all very different kids. They're all very beautiful kids.
How much of Joe do you see in them?
Too much at times.
Does that worry you?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does worry me, because being at the ages they're at, they don't know how to harness it.
Do they lean on you for that, or do you more so see it in them?
It's a relationship that we all have with our parents, you know. Like, it always lands better when it comes from someone else, you know. So I can give the absolute best advices that I have, that I know, that I've learnt to my kids, but it won't land it anywhere near as good as how someone else delivers it to them. That's the nature of the relationships that we have with our kids, you know. I struggle because I see that, I don't even like to use this word, talent. I struggle that I see the talent in some of my kids, and sometimes it can land poorly when we're trying to give the instructions or advices that we want to give as parents. It can land poorly on them because they feel that they're being judged, or they're feeling that we're too hard on them. But you just want your kids to do their best. And when they're not doing their best, it frustrates the shit out of you. Because, not speaking for their experiences, but I understand a hell of a lot of reasons why is because of the early experiences they have. I've noted on that a few times this chat, and there's kids there's kids that I've got in obviously the 5 kids that I've got that I didn't spend a hell of a lot of time with them in their early years.
Let's talk about that.
That's going to impact them.
I think the 2 hardest jobs in the world, mum and dad. And mate, I'm so blessed to say that as a young man, 29 going on 30, who's looking forward to that period of his life, I look at my 2 and I go, whoa, how on earth you did it, I don't know.
You're 29,
yeah.
and do you have kids?
No, we're starting that
Doing the
process.
best, yeah.
We For us, the path is a little bit different. As a male with CF, I don't have a vas deferens, which means, lack of a better term, I'm shooting blanks. So for us, we have to go down the path of IVF, and so it looks different. It's a little bit more planned, but we're taking the first steps on that journey to learn, to understand, to put ourselves in a position where we can do that. And I think, how do I live up to the standard that my parents set? And I know they don't have that expectation of me, and for all of us, it looks different. But I just recognize it as one hell of a job, and God, I'm so proud of my parents now as an adult, because they bloody nailed it. But it's really hard. It's different for everyone, and I know you've spoken openly about having different relationships to a degree with all of your kids, because your kids are to 3 different partners, and that looks different at different stages and ages of your life, right? And of your life journey. So talk to me about that, and how do you, I guess, come to terms with the fact that it doesn't look the same for all of the kids.
Yeah, you're 29, and I had my first at 21. I was a baby.
It's crazy,
and
isn't it?
and the mother of my eldest, she was only 19. Like, just babies ourselves. How different I am as a parent now to what I was then, and like that's the stuff that I'm indebted forever to. I guess there's a million books now to tell you how to parent, but I didn't know of them then. And you do everything that you see, that you learn, and there's no real handbook on how to do things. I guess the one positive of the digital age is that we can listen to fantastic podcasts or videos online around how to do the best that we're supposed to do to our young people. But I've been on that journey for a number of years now, that has taken me, I guess, down a path of a hell of a lot of reflection, a lot of path of weeding out some of the bullshit that I had, and the behaviors that I had, and also the behaviors that I still have. So it's tough. It's tough being a dad to an almost 21-year-old, and the difference to an almost, she's 8. So the range and who they are as people, and who I was at the different ages. Like, so my youngest, Frankie, like, I was all but non-existent when Brody was 8.
He's your oldest.
And he's my oldest. So they see a very different version of dad. And I'm also conscious that, they hear these things, and, they might see footage of certain things. But if there's one thing, like I've said it a million times, I don't care about sport. I don't care about accolade. I don't care about anything. But my kids getting to be the best that they can be. And what that looks like for each of them is very different. Like, all of my kids are so different. So different. Like there's natural ability, sporting ability in some of them, and then there's not so natural ability that they have to work their ass off to make up the ground. And then there's ones that I actually don't know if they will be sports people. They might be in the arts, which I just want them to be happy. I don't care who they are or what they do. I just want them to be happy.
At all of their respective ages, the one beauty of being a parent is you can remember yourself to a degree at those ages, especially at your kids' age ranges, 21 to 8. I wonder what you would like to share with them. I know that sometimes they listen to these things. What would you share with them that maybe you wish young Joe had the opportunity to hear?
Don't base yourself on what I did. don't base yourself on who I am. Just be you. Because like at different ages, like I was doing different things. My 14-year-old, you know, if there's footy teams he didn't make, there wasn't a rep team that I didn't make. You know, so it's unfair to, you know, that's not, you know, big note at myself or anything like that. But it's unfair for him to, like, I don't want him to get down to judge himself on that. So, like, I just say, don't forget about that. Forget about who I was. You know, as a 21-year-old, don't judge yourself on that, because I genuinely believe that there's different areas of each of my kids that are far beyond who I am. Far beyond. And I believe that our only responsibility as a parent is to help our kids be better than what we were. And like, I know that if they don't have judgment of themselves, I know that whatever they do, they will be successful at. And the path is set. They just got to follow it. Sometimes we can get our ideas mixed because we want to be something. And when we don't get that, then, you know, we stub our toe a little bit and, you know, fall in a heap. But I just want them to know that just be you. And whatever that is, whatever the dreams are, don't like work to the dreams. It's not going to fall in your lap. And I think that's why I say I think it's unfair to base who I was on who they are. Because I believe that, like, who they can be is far beyond anything that I can be.
Yeah, it's a beautiful message. It's quite interesting. I feel that not a lot of people in the podcast space like this idea, but I'm a big believer that for all of us in life, whether we realize it yet or not, we're trying to achieve a balance. I'm a very ambitious person by nature. For me, the balance is learning to let go sometimes, in learning to trust that things will find me eventually if I'm doing the right things, if I'm putting one foot in front of the other. And I often think about how for all of us as human beings, sometimes we're a little bit more relaxed by nature and we need a little bit more ambition. And it's trying to find that balance is so difficult because it's so personal, right?
If there was times where I pushed, if there were times when I pushed just to go that little bit further, then I wouldn't be sitting where I am now. Or if there are times that I pulled when I did go that little bit further, I wouldn't be sitting here now. So I believe that we end up exactly where we're supposed to. You know, and what people believe or what you think, it actually don't matter.
Absolutely.
Like I believe it's controlled by something bigger than us. Like if I had it my way back in 2012, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you. Something bigger than me kept me here.
What do you put that down to? Is that religious?
Is it faith? Is it spirituality?
Faith? Yeah.
Like I believe that the old people have a path for me. And I know that I'm nowhere near where I've got to get to. I know that big things are coming.
I love that, mate. That trust and intuition are intertwined.
I think if you just be good, you just be a good person and help people and do more things for others than you do for yourself, then you're going to be rewarded. Like I say that, like, I tried within the power of my two hands to not be here. Something bigger than me kept me here. It was beyond my control. So whether you say it's your belief, my belief, or next door's belief, I believe the old people kept me here because they've got a path for me. And what that path is, we don't know yet. We don't need to know. We just need to trust it'll be all right.
Faith, trust in the bigger picture for yourself. What about society? It's a troubling time.
I don't care about them. I don't care about them. As far as my journey, I don't care about society. Like, we have to conform in ways to get and do things that we need to do. but I don't actually care about what society wants for me to be.
Let's forget about what society wants for you. Let's talk about what's playing out in society as a whole. The culture, the social conversation. I was overseas celebrating my honeymoon with Soph, having the best time. And this one morning I decided to check social media. And I look back at my home country and there's riots, there's division, there is a neo-Nazi party standing in front of an audience of people spreading very divisive ideas. In fact, not just spreading ideas, but inflicting violence.
Everything you said before you say anything more is how this country was formed. On my people. The more that we understand that that isn't an ideology, for us that's real. And that plays out in real time every day. Now, you're just seeing it.
So how the conversation is, because for me, I'm sitting there watching this and I'm listening to what they're saying. And I could not stop watching these videos because I'm trying to understand in my head how, as somebody who's existing today, who should know what we now all know, how can you have that view? Where does that actually come from? And how do we not just argue against it, but actually change it? Because I'm a big believer, right? One of the things I hate more than anything is domestic violence. I've never understood it. I've never understood how, as a man, or in any case, but I've never understood from my experience as a man, how you could want to hurt somebody who is more vulnerable than you. How you could want to inflict violence, in most cases, on someone who is a part of your life, an integral part of your life. To me, I can't get that idea through my head. And so when I think about it, I get frustrated. I was in an incident last year where I saw a DV case playing out on the street and I got in the middle of it and it became a big thing. Thankfully, I wasn't hurt, not the situation that I wanted to be in, but I felt like I had to do the right thing. Ultimately, the gentleman got charged. I think about that situation and I think, I can't understand it. I have to do something about this. But I walk away from that situation. The guy's been charged. But then a couple of weeks later, I see him out on the street. And I'm asking myself the question that thankfully, that person, the perpetrator of that violence, didn't do something to end someone's life. But because he hasn't ended someone's life, the consequences are a bit of a slap on the wrist. Maybe if he's a repeat offender, he spends a little bit of time behind bars, but eventually that person and their ideologies are back out on the street. So how do we not just be angry about it and want to change it, but how do we actually get that person to shift their perspective in a way in which they become a functioning, kind, and healthy part of society?
I think it's, I don't think I know. It comes down to, power. And people who struggle with power didn't have power. And they formed behaviors around power that help them feel secure. So I believe it all comes out of insecurity and the need for power. And in not, I guess, finger pointing or relating to any circumstance, but knowing that all of that is birthed in power. And the struggles with violence in this community is a struggle with power.
So let's say for someone like the leader of the neo-Nazi party, how do we change a guy like that?
Love. Because they weren't loved at some point in their life. And I'm not saying that we just drop everything and go off and hug everyone, but I'm saying people like that form behaviors of power out of not being loved. So that starts in the very early years in our life. All that. In how we are loved, in how we are shown love, and not just how we are shown love from a parent perspective, but how love lands for the young person.
Is that to suggest that our hope is in the next generation?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
The ideologies of white supremacy are still there, but it's getting smaller. And the reason they are jumping up and screaming to be seen is that the fact that they don't have comfort in who they are. So they scream to just be noticed.
Mm.
And if I look at somebody like that, if I look at a kid who's just screaming to be noticed, that tells me that that person didn't get love, care, and affection. So if we want more of that in our world, then we have to, I believe, we have to put more funding, programming in and around how we interact with our young people.
Those early years.
Those early years. Everything is formed in the early years. Like those people who stand in front of those flags or whatever they stand in front of, they are hurt little people inside adults' bodies.
Mm.
We need to heal those little people. How that starts is by helping the big people treat the little people better.
It's a really sad result that unfortunately a lot of their kids will grow up with similar ideologies. And I don't think that means we should give up on their kids by any means, because you never know. It can be one good person.
I also think they're becoming a minority.
Oh, absolutely.
And I always say it's the same with racism. The dinosaurs are dying.
Mm.
Like, because the people who got off the boats told everyone, right, we're talking about 1788, told everyone that the coloured people were less than them. And then they told their kids, and they told their kids, and they told their kids. And throughout the mix is that the men told the women were subservient to the men, and they were below and less than the man. And then they taught their kids that. And then they modelled that to their kids. And 5 or 6 generations, here we are.
Weird power hierarchies, right?
Like
that don't make sense.
It makes no sense.
Let me ask you this. So there's like real world things that we can change today that aren't going to end racism. You know, there's those memes online where somebody says something like racism over. I don't think that there's a simple solution like that, right? But there's certainly things that we can do that I think make a difference.
Like what?
This becomes a challenging conversation.
I'm asking you the question, like what?
Well, for me, it's always been about, I think you love who you spend your time around and grow up, and you learn to appreciate people who you see life through their perspective, who you learn to live life a day in their shoes. You know, it's empathy. Right? It's empathy and love. Compassion, all of those things. But mate, I'm just so blessed that I grew up with beautiful parents who, you know, encourage that on us kids, and we saw that play out. But I think about things like, you know, for me, I always celebrated Gen 26 because I love the country, right? And then a couple of years ago, I'm going to say maybe 5-6 years ago, my nan and pop, as any old person who's got plenty of spare time on their hands do, start searching our family's ancestry and our history. And they go down this path, tracking understanding, and realize that my pop's mother had Aboriginal background. And so they start to learn, and they love the history. My pop unfortunately has dementia now, so he doesn't remember any of this, but they become very entrenched in the local Aboriginal community and started to meet and, you know, have a lot of great relationships. They've now moved to Queensland, but in the Illawarra area, and become, you know, quite a loved part of that community. And we start having these conversations. I'm meeting people, hosting this podcast, which gives you a lot of empathy because you're meeting people who have walked different paths to you. And I start thinking about that date. And I remember it was a few years ago, Soph was working. I was off and didn't have a lot to do. I thought I'd take myself for a coffee, go for a walk and a swim at the beach. And I was walking along the cycle track, drinking a coffee, and I saw families out having barbecues, playing cricket. And I thought, God, how lucky are we to live in such a beautiful country? The sun was shining, not a cloud in the sky, the water's sparkling. I'm thinking about how blessed I am as a young man with, takes 50, 30 tablets a day. The fact that I'm able to have those opportunities because I don't live in a third world country, that I'm healthy because of that luck. And as I have that moment of gratitude, I also have this moment of, fuck, I wish that we could all find a way to celebrate this amazing country together in a way in which my mate Joe, who hasn't had the same experience, who doesn't think as fondly of this date because what it means for him and his family, feels like he can't celebrate this day, doesn't want to celebrate this day, understandably. Far out, I wish that Joe and I could sit together on a day that was culturally significant for all of us who move forward, who go, hey, this country's a bloody amazing place and we get to enjoy it together. So I think about that date and I think, why don't we change it? Why don't we? And some of the criticism is that we can change the date, but it's not going to change anything. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think that it at least shows that we're trying to move in a direction that's positive for everyone, right? But there's a lot of these conversations, it's not just about Gen 26, but a lot of these conversations that are playing out in society right now. The same way that I find it weird that we're having a conversation around getting rid of the Aboriginal flag and being united by one flag. For me, I think, well, why can't we fly both? On one hand, I respect that, there is a flag that our diggers fought under, and I respect their service to the country. We're so blessed that we have a country that isn't ruled by somebody like a Hitler, where things could be far more extreme than they are. So I respect those people, and I respect that they fought by that flag and sing that same national anthem. But I also respect that it doesn't feel the same for a whole other group of people who are native to this land. So I've just given you a whole lot, and I'm going to leave it with you now to talk to me about all of that.
The thing is that maybe I should jump in when I have things that come up. But it sounds beautiful. But the reality is it's not like that for everyone. Like, I don't care about a date. I want a country to celebrate. Now, you just rattled off a stack load of things worth celebrating in the country. But for an Aboriginal person, every day we get out of bed, it ain't the same reality. With more likely to be incarcerated than we are to be other things. More likely to die by suicide at rates higher than non-Indigenous people. Like it's not a reality for everyone. So words sound fantastic, but it's not that for a stack load of our people as well. I think the only way that we can come together is as what I talked about earlier, is that we start to learn about us, start to learn about who we are, because the reality for you and how you get treated and the steps that you walk every day just aren't the same steps. You're guaranteed a very different life than what we are.
So how do we... So my challenge with this is, for so many people, control is out of their reach, right? Like, for me sitting here today, I would love to be able to make the world a better place for you, Joe. The same way that I know you would want to do the same for me. But what you're talking about there is a bigger picture. It's people in power. Also, as you said,
I think it's also everyone. Like, how do you know my world's not better than yours? Like you just said, I would like to make a better world for you.
I think I'm the luckiest man alive, Joe.
Yeah, that's fine. But again, like, how you interpret the world could be different to me. Right. So I think we come back to that compassion piece and just have less judgment for people, but understand that the reality of this country is not the same for everyone. And this country of the lands that we walk today have been walked on for, science documents, 100, 120 odd thousand years or something like that, right? What that was then and who it is now, two very different places. But I do believe that with the right amount of education, the right amount of understanding about the land and about all people, is that we can find a way to start to walk together. And the only way we do that is if we sit with each other and have a lens of compassion and understanding for each other. Because as I said, like, I'm not sure that I could go through a history lesson with you and have you educate me about my people.
No,
But
for
I
sure.
reckon I could do that with you, right? Because we've only learned about you. You've never learned about us. So how do you know that the world that we lived wasn't better than the world we've got now? Like, it just comes back to perception and opinion of what we believe we have now. The way that we're viewed in the world is different.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you think
You've asked me plenty already.
Do you think there's a world moving forward that could be better for all of us?
Yeah, I do. But the only way we come together with that is through love, compassion, and understanding. Like more understanding and less judgment.
Yeah.
Right? More humility and less ego. Right? More collectivism and less power. Sharing with each other rather than taking off each other and stackpiling. We as people, particularly the first humans of this earth, like we did things for everyone, for each other. Like, we could walk for months across country and sit down and be fed. I don't reckon we could do that today. We couldn't walk for a month and knock on someone's house and say, feed me. We couldn't. Right? But there's documentation of the Brewarrina fish traps, of multiple different mobs coming together, sharing ceremony, sharing song, sharing food, sharing relationships. That was done for thousands of years, where we could walk for months and be united by song, be united by country, be united by what we knew and could share with each other. We don't have that now. Right? So ask yourself this, well, tell me what world's better. Like, you can walk and be with your family and meet new mob across the way, across the country, because all of our mobs across the country were all connected in different ways, united by song, united by relationships. Tell me what's a better world, where you could eat everywhere you went, sit with people and understand relationships with each other, where no one was seen above each other. Tell me what's a better world.
Correct me if I'm wrong, what you're suggesting here is in the modern world that is just compassion, empathy, kindness, love for your other human, person sitting beside you.
There was an obligation to that. It wasn't a responsibility. It was an obligation, because we had obligation to each other, to country, and to the path that we walked. Tell me what's a better world. In a world where there's poverty, in the world where there's homelessness. Tell me the better world where we never went without. You're always looked after, because you're always connected by song and by story. Yeah. You're always fed, because you always had responsibility and obligation to each other. Now I walk next door to my house in the middle of Sydney and they won't share a thing. Tell me what's a better world.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't think that has anything to do with the way that we have to be set up economically or any of that. It's just kindness and compassion of each of us as individuals.
It's values.
Yeah.
It's values. Without understanding that our old stories, everything around creation, how the birds got their colours wasn't a story about birds and colours. It was a story about helping people. Tiddalik the frog wasn't a story about a frog. It was a story about greed and the importance of sharing.
You just made me think of something that I found it's come to the forefront of my mind from my personal experience. A couple of years ago, might have been a year and a half ago. There's a tablet I take around 20, 30 times a day called Creon. And Creon, for someone with cystic fibrosis whose pancreas doesn't work, is the digestive enzyme that your healthy pancreas would release to help you break down fat and protein. And somehow we came into a global shortage of this drug that, ultimately keeps us alive because it allows us to be fed and have nutrition. And everyone's kind of like, what's going on here? We've never experienced this before in our lifetime with this drug. And so I put up this story. Hey, has anyone heard about this? Anyone got any information? How true is it? What are we looking at? Timelines? Mate, the amount of people in the CF community who messaged me and said, hey, I've got a few extra bottles at home. If you get tight, let me know. And I'm like, isn't that cool? Something that we all need to survive. It's the fucking toilet paper thing in COVID. How much do you need, mate? Seriously, if it gets dire, fucking wash your ass in the shower. What are you stockpiling toilet paper for? This mentality of we can't be empathetic, we can't be compassionate, we can't be kind or generous is a mentality that it doesn't matter what economic situation we're in, we have to be able to find that value for each other.
It's capitalism at its heart.
But don't you think that we can still be kind and empathetic and compassionate while being in a capitalistic society?
100% we can.
Yeah.
100% we can. 100% we should.
Yeah.
But I would argue, why do we need a capitalist society?
Well,
why is there hierarchy? Why can't we all just be getting what we need rather than what we want?
Does that work? I know it worked
It did
a
for
long
thousands
time
of
ago.
years.
Yeah, I know
it
worked
did
a
for
long time ago.
thousands of years.
Can you see that working in the world that we have today? And I know that it's...
Walking two worlds is difficult.
A lot we can learn.
A lot we should learn. But how do we learn it? Only by sitting and having conversations like this. Having less judgment, more empathy, more compassion. Start treating people with how we want to be treated as individuals ourselves. I know certain ways of life that could be impactful and beneficial for people that come and sit with us and listen with us and learn from us. That's why so many of us, particularly in the Aboriginal mental health space, social emotional wellbeing space, are loud about the ways that our old ways worked. That's why I'm doing a doctorate in it. Like to share that story with a wider community in a Western context.
Mate, this has been a heap of fun. I'm glad we got to have this chat.
Uncomfortable at times. Maybe not for you, but for me it was.
I would say that there's I understand why for you it would be uncomfortable. For me a little bit too, because you are, mate, I'm a loving person by nature, and whether you get any that's big coming from the person who's saying it, right? I know that it's rich when it's coming from me saying that I'm a good person by nature, by heart. And I recognise there's some things in this world that are challenging to change. Maybe got a lot of different people in my life that I love, none more than my beautiful wife and our families. And I'd love to see a world in which all of us can get on. It's not nice jumping on social media and seeing two sides of any argument fucking screaming down each other's throats and no room for conversation, connection.
What side gets
empathy.
thrown under the bus more? I don't reckon it'd be your side.
Yeah, and I'm not even just saying racially.
I also not. Well, that's what I was getting at. Sorry.
Yeah. There's so many different conversations. Yeah. There's so many different conversations about, what's right, what's wrong. Some I agree with, some I don't.
The echo chamber of social media, where
a
hell of a lot of it's not even right.
No, correct.
A hell of a lot of it's not even true.
That's the one thing that I would say is that the ratio of negative to positive on these little devices that sit in our pocket day to day is so much higher than it is out in the real world. And I know we've spoken about plenty of the real world challenges today, but I'm optimistic about the fact that when I walk outside, I see more people trying to do good than I see the opposite. And I think that that's the only way we change if we continue to champion that.
Oh, without a doubt, I'm a believer in that. I'm a believer in. I've said it in circles in the past where we've been spoken negatively about. I just say, just keep modelling the right behaviour.
Mm.
You keep modelling the right behaviour, treating people well, doing what's right, then the people will see it and they'll notice it and they'll follow.
Yeah, role models, right? It's important for all of us. Mate, I appreciate you. Thanks for making
Thanks,
the time.
brother.
Thanks for bloody driving
4 o'clock this
4
morning.
o'clock this morning, leaving Dubbo, getting here to be with me. It's been good.
It's been good. It's been good. I talk about discomfort, but those moments of discomfort are fleeting, you know. And then I realise that I'm not in any danger, that I'm not unsafe, because of the conversations and the warmth that you show. So I'm really grateful for this conversation.
Oh, pleasure's been mine, mate. Cheers. That was fun.